This is his actual bunker, and it really looks like kind of an Aztec pyramid or some Egyptian structure from ancient times. It's just so monumentally huge, gigantic.
Two 9-year-old boys were digging in the sand on a quiet Danish beach when their shovels struck something metal. They kept digging. What emerged from beneath the dunes had not been touched since 1945. When authorities finally pried open the sealed door, the air that escaped carried the scent of a room closed only yesterday. Across Europe, hidden beneath parking lots, forests, and ordinary family homes, Nazi bunkers have been surfacing with discoveries that challenge everything historians thought they knew about World War II. From submarines entombed beneath city streets to skeletal remains buried under the headquarters of Nazi command. What researchers found inside these forgotten fortresses continues to leave the world in shock. And the discovery waiting at the end of this journey is one that even investigators refuse to revisit after what they saw inside. A quiet afternoon along Denmark's windswept western coastline was the last place anyone expected history to awaken. The dunes around Hovig had always shifted with the seasons, swallowing and revealing small scraps of driftwood and seashells. Yet on that particular day, in 2008, something unusual caught the eyes of two 9-year-old boys. A rusted metal bucket peeked through the sand, its rim just visible as if calling out to be found. Curious hands began digging, and with each handful of sand removed, the object grew stranger, older, and somehow too deliberate to be simple debris. Another layer of sand gave way to something hard beneath. A man-made structure shaped with a precision that felt out of place on an empty beach. The boys stepped back, unsure whether to keep digging or run home. Their hesitance dissolved the moment they saw a flat concrete edge beneath the bucket. Whatever they were looking at had not been built recently. The discovery had the weight of decades resting on top of it. A call to the authorities brought adults rushing to the scene. Archaeologists, local historians, and curious townspeople gathered as the sand continued to fall away. What emerged was the outline of a sealed door, still locked shut. The cold air seeping from the cracks carried a musty scent, a smell that had been trapped since the days when Europe was burning in conflict. As the doorway was eventually opened, a chill swept across the crowd. Not from the temperature, but from the realization of what lay inside. A narrow corridor led the way into an underground bunker, perfectly preserved despite being hidden for more than 60 years. The first room revealed metal beds lined up in rigid formation. Thin blankets were still folded at the corners. Socks lay where they had been dropped by their owners. A pair of worn boots sat neatly under one of the bunks. Nothing had been disturbed, as if the soldiers had stepped out for only a moment and never returned. The silence felt impossibly heavy. Further exploration uncovered shelves lined with vials used for wartime medical treatments. The labels were faded but readable, describing ointments, disinfectants, and antidotes used against the injuries and illnesses of frontline life. Glass bottles containing long discolored liquids clinked quietly when lifted. Nearby, stacks of old books filled with German text lay undamaged, protected by the bunker's cold interior. Even stamps marked with wartime imagery sat untouched, small relics of propaganda that had somehow survived the decades without crumbling. Another chamber revealed items that added an unexpectedly human touch. There were handwritten notes, fragments of letters, and even abandoned laundry. A few soldiers had hung their undergarments on makeshift lines, frozen in time by the darkness that had swallowed the room. One corner held a rack of metal tools, including hammers, wrenches, and keys that must once have opened interior storage spaces. Each object whispered the routines of men who had lived ordinary lives in extraordinary times. Deeper inside, a surprising collection of preserved food cans rested in a storage crate. The labels displayed brands that no longer existed, remnants of a supply chain that once supported thousands of troops along Denmark's coast. Next to the crates sat several soda bottles with intact caps, their faded labels showing designs typical of wartime ration packaging. Though undrinkable, they offered a vivid glimpse into the everyday preferences of soldiers stationed in an isolated location. Local historians were astonished by the discovery. Of the roughly 7,000 bunkers built along the Danish shore, most had been stripped bare or destroyed after the war. The idea that 4 of them remained fully furnished felt impossible. The coastal sands had acted like a natural vault, transforming the structures into time capsules. The cold, airless environment preserved delicate items that would have decayed anywhere else. For researchers, it was as if the clock had been turned backward. News spread beyond Denmark, drawing visitors from Germany and beyond. Lines of people waited to step inside the cramped 20-square-meter rooms that once squeezed in 9 soldiers and a commander. Heated debates followed. Some residents wished the bunkers sealed again, preferring to let the war's remnants fade away. Others argued that the discovery held too much historical value to bury again. Preserving them, they said, meant preserving a truth that had almost vanished. Each object, from the humble socks to the chilling medicine vials, added another layer to the story. Life inside the bunkers had been more routine than glamorous, more human than heroic. Yet the rooms felt charged with a strange energy. They offered a rare look at the everyday world of soldiers who had stood guard in a moment when Europe's future hung in the balance. These bunkers held the quiet traces of ordinary soldiers. But deeper into Europe, researchers would soon walk into a very different kind of silence, one that suggested some parts of history were never meant to surface. The next place where the past rose unexpectedly was deep within a forest that had once concealed the center of Nazi power. Long after the Danish bunkers revealed their quiet traces of ordinary soldiers, investigators in Poland walked into a very different kind of silence. The Masurian woods surrounding the former wolf's lair carried an unsettling stillness, the kind that hinted that some secrets had been deliberately buried. Trees grew thick over shattered concrete structures, and vines crawled across walls that once protected the most secret military headquarters of Adolf Hitler. The approach to the ruins began with a narrow dirt road that wound through pines until it opened onto moss-covered bunkers built with walls several meters thick. Time had not softened the structure's intimidating presence. The wolf's lair had been designed to vanish into the landscape, and despite its collapse in 1945, much of it remained hidden under decades of natural overgrowth. Researchers carefully marked each section they entered, mindful that the area had once been riddled with more than 50,000 landmines. Even after extensive clearance efforts, every step demanded caution. The complex itself had been massive. More than 200 buildings once stood across 250 hectares of forest. It was also the site of the most famous assassination attempt against Hitler in July 1944, a failed plot that resulted in brutal reprisals claiming thousands of lives. But what investigators found in 2024 had nothing to do with that event. A new investigation was launched when archaeologists received permission to examine an area once occupied by Hermann Göring's personal quarters. The region had rarely been disturbed because of the hazardous terrain, but a recent survey revealed unusual ground disturbances beneath the collapsed foundations. The excavation began slowly, layer by layer, until the outlines of a buried trench appeared. What lay inside was so unexpected that even veteran researchers froze in disbelief. An initial sweep uncovered human bones, resting deeper than anyone anticipated. The skeletal remains were arranged in a pattern that did not resemble a graveyard, nor the hurried pits associated with wartime casualties. The first skull found had no lower jaw, and the limbs were missing hands and feet. More bones appeared as the team carefully expanded the dig, revealing a total of 5 individuals: 3 adults, a teenager, and an infant. The silence around the trench deepened as the reality settled in. These were not victims buried with ceremony. These were bodies deliberately stripped of identity. Another unsettling detail emerged when investigators noticed small, stone-like objects placed beside each skeleton. They were fossils known as belemnoids, remnants of ancient squid-like creatures that had no connection to the war. Their presence beside the bodies made no immediate sense. The stones did not match burial traditions in the region, nor any known military practice. Forensic specialists studied them closely, but found no markings, no symbols, and no indication they served a ritualistic purpose. They simply existed beside the dead, amplifying the mystery. As the remains were examined further, it became clear that the bodies lacked any clothing or personal belongings. There were no buttons, no scraps of fabric, no metal objects that could hint at rank, nationality, or occupation. The soil around them offered no burn marks or weapon fragments. Everything that might have identified them had been erased. Polish prosecutors opened an inquiry, hoping for even a single clue that could unravel the circumstances of the burial. Records from the Wolf's Lair were sparse because the retreating German forces had destroyed countless documents as the war neared its end. Witness testimonies from the surrounding villages offered no clear leads. The tragedy lay in the fact that the individuals found beneath Göring's quarters could have been anyone: forced laborers, prisoners of war, civilians caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. No answer seemed definitive. The case wrapped up in March 2024 with more questions than answers. No document, report, or survivor testimony linked directly to the 5 individuals. Nothing explained why an infant was among them. Nothing clarified why limbs were removed. Nothing revealed why fossil stones were included at all. The Wolf's Lair had offered one more enigma to a place built on hidden motives. If this was discovered by accident beneath the heart of Nazi command, what else might still be concealed beneath Europe's abandoned strongholds? The question hung heavily in the air, and deeper into the continent, researchers were about to find something that should never have existed at all. Unearthing history sometimes begins with a single, faded line. A historian specializing in European military cartography was scanning a worn World War II map when his eyes caught markings that defied all known records. These were not ordinary battlefield coordinates. Intricate symbols hinted at a vast defensive network that had vanished from official archives. His pulse quickened as he realized these annotations might reveal a forgotten artillery fortress buried beneath the Normandy countryside. Nothing in post-war documentation suggested such an elaborate complex had ever existed. The field expedition that followed was unlike any conventional dig. Thick undergrowth had claimed the land for decades, swallowing trails and concealing trenches beneath wild growth. Using ground-penetrating radar, the team traced the faint outlines of fortified bunkers that had resisted both time and human memory. What emerged was staggering. A labyrinth of reinforced structures, zigzagging foxholes, and subterranean corridors designed to house troops, ammunition, and heavy artillery. Each discovery suggested a level of strategic sophistication previously unknown in the region. Exploring the underground sections revealed secrets more haunting than the surface clues. Soldiers' quarters were lined with remnants of personal belongings frozen in the moment they had been abandoned. Old medical equipment lay in shadowy tunnels, a silent testament to the fortress hospital that had tended the wounded while bombs rained above. Rusted surgical tools, faded bandages, and abandoned stretchers offered a window into the wartime experience that no textbook could convey. The hospital's design anticipated prolonged sieges, with hidden escape routes and water reservoirs capable of sustaining defenders for months. Every corner of the fortress seemed to whisper intentional secrecy. Heavy doors carved into solid stone suggested protection from both bombardment and prying eyes. Graffiti etched into the walls by soldiers marked dates, names, and even minor victories. These human traces gave the fortress a pulse of its own, bridging the gap between history and lived experience. Technological evidence deepened the mystery. Acoustic measurements within the tunnels showed unusual soundproofing patterns that amplified gunfire in one corridor while muffling it in another. Some speculated that the fortress architects had considered psychological warfare, using sound to disorient intruders. Further analysis revealed concealed ammunition caches and hidden observation posts, some directly under open fields where artillery might have fired undetected. Even the surrounding terrain held secrets. Overgrown trenches led to reinforced positions, camouflaged with vegetation and natural slopes. Some bunkers contained electrical wiring and primitive telecommunication lines, hinting at early attempts at encrypted messaging for battlefield coordination. The fortress was not merely defensive, it was a hub for strategic dominance in the region. By the end of the expedition, the team had mapped nearly half the fortress in three-dimensional models. The sheer scale challenged prior assumptions about Nazi engineering in occupied France. Yet questions lingered, like the dust in the tunnels. Who had decided to erase this network from records? Were there still chambers untouched by modern exploration? The map had led them here, but the full story of this forgotten fortress was far from complete. A fortress erased from history is unsettling enough, but in Hamburg, workers discovered something beneath an ordinary parking lot that proved the Nazis had hidden their most valuable military assets in the last places anyone would think to look. Beneath the ordinary bustle of Hamburg streets lies a story hidden in concrete and steel. Urban planners knew only of routine foundations when excavation crews unearthed a thick reinforced bunker beneath a parking lot. Initial surveys suggested nothing unusual, yet subtle anomalies in the soil density hinted at something massive entombed below. As researchers descended, the enormity of the discovery became impossible to ignore. 3 German U-boats, crushed and sealed beneath the remnants of a collapsed roof, lay in eerie stillness as though frozen mid-escape. The submarines themselves told a story of desperation and last-minute chaos. Each hull bore the scars of air raids, dents, and twisted metal, marking the fury of attacks during the final months of World War II. Small portholes were sealed with crude welding, evidence of hurried attempts to prepare them for missions that never sailed. Inside, torpedo racks remained partially stocked, a grim reminder of unfulfilled operations. Historians speculated that these vessels were relocated underground to evade Allied reconnaissance. Yet the specifics of their entrapment remained a mystery for decades. Surrounding the submarines, the bunker's architecture revealed deliberate ingenuity. Massive concrete slabs had been layered to withstand direct hits, with steel reinforcements arranged in lattice patterns. Hidden maintenance tunnels crisscrossed the site, allowing crews to maneuver in silence while avoiding surface detection. The silence inside the structure carried a haunting quality. Rusting ladders led to observation points and control rooms, their instruments frozen in time. Detailed logbooks, partially intact, suggested regular drills and meticulous record-keeping, as if the crews expected to return after missions. Personal artifacts, jackets, boots, and scattered letters offered a window into the human side of this subterranean operation. The story of how they became entombed began on November 11, 1945. 6 months after Germany's surrender, British Royal Engineers executed a controlled demolition using 32 tons of explosives. The powerful detonation caused the bunker's central dividing wall to collapse, resulting in catastrophic roof failure. This intentional destruction effectively sealed the fate of the submarines within, creating an accidental time capsule of Nazi naval technology. The structure, despite this severe damage, proved remarkably resilient. A subsequent demolition attempt in 2001, using 150 kilograms of dynamite, barely affected the remaining fortification. The entombed submarines remained virtually forgotten until 1985, when researchers rediscovered them. Their exploration yielded remarkable photographs documenting the submarine's condition after 4 decades underwater. Ultimately, in the 1990s, German authorities filled the bunker with gravel and concrete, transforming the area into a parking lot. Today, these once fearsome warships lie beneath the Hamburg Free Port, completely inaccessible. Discovery of the site raised difficult questions about the intersection of war and urban life. Hamburg had rebuilt over these remnants without knowing their full extent. The parking lot above, with its daily flow of vehicles, concealed decades of industrial ambition and wartime ingenuity. If submarines were hidden beneath a parking lot, what other dormant relics might be buried beneath neighborhoods, schools, and office buildings across Europe? The Hamburg discovery showed that the Nazis had hidden their most valuable technology in the last places anyone would search. But deep in the mountains of Poland, researchers discovered something even more ambitious. A project so massive, so deliberately concealed, that even today, no one knows its true purpose. Shadows stretched long across the Owl Mountains as the explorers approached entrances that had been sealed for decades. Unlike the urban chaos of Hamburg or the overgrown fields of Normandy, this remote region held silence so profound it felt almost unnatural. Carved into granite cliffs, massive tunnel mouths yawned like the jaws of a forgotten beast. Signs of forced labor were etched into the walls. Deep grooves from pickaxes, fragile scaffolding remnants, and scattered tools left to decay served as a testament to human endurance and suffering under impossible conditions. The scale of what had been attempted here was staggering. Descending into the first tunnels, the cold was immediate. Moisture dripped from ceilings high above, creating echoing puddles that carried every footstep with unnerving clarity. Some chambers stretched over 50 meters in length, their ceilings supported by enormous stone pillars. Light from portable lamps revealed corridors branching in every direction, labyrinthine paths that seemed designed to confuse or entrap anyone who ventured too far. There were signs of an industrial operation, empty cable spools, rusted cranes, and faint traces of ventilation shafts capable of moving massive amounts of air into spaces designed for habitation or manufacturing. The complex, known as Project Riese, meaning giant, encompassed 7 underground structures across the Owl Mountains region and extended beneath Kjunj Castle. Workers had carved approximately 9 kilometers of tunnels through solid rock, creating 25,000 square meters of underground space. Yet despite its enormous scale, the project reached merely 11% completion before abandonment. The purpose of these tunnels remained elusive. Original documentation appears to have been deliberately destroyed, leaving numerous theories. Some evidence suggested it would serve as an alternate headquarters for Nazi leadership. Others proposed it was intended for underground armaments production or experimental weapons research. Some chambers contained alcoves that could have housed high-ranking personnel, while others appeared large enough to store enormous weapons. Every discovery fueled speculation, yet nothing concrete survived the chaos of war. Signs of human suffering were everywhere. Small inscriptions scratched into walls offered fleeting glimpses into the minds of prisoners forced to work here. Names, dates, and cryptic phrases hinted at desperation, hope, and occasional resignation. Makeshift sleeping areas were discovered, often in corners where light never reached, revealing that those who built these tunnels endured harsh conditions, minimal rations, and constant threat of death. The workforce behind this massive project reveals one of the darkest aspects of Nazi Germany. The vast majority of workers were forced laborers, primarily concentration camp inmates and prisoners of war. Many did not survive. Technical ingenuity, however, was undeniable. Reinforced chambers suggested protection against bombardment, while some tunnels were lined with thick concrete capable of sustaining prolonged attacks. Evidence of unfinished elevator shafts indicated plans to transport heavy equipment between levels, but construction halted abruptly, leaving machinery partially installed. Explorers also found subtle clues that pointed to secrecy beyond mere military necessity. Certain corridors were deliberately convoluted, with dead ends and hidden chambers invisible to casual observation. The mountain itself seemed designed to whisper, to hide, to safeguard what could never be allowed into the public eye. Even as the team mapped the tunnels, the atmosphere weighed heavily. Every passage raised questions. What if the unfinished project had been completed? What technology or knowledge might have emerged from these dark corridors? The Owl Mountains remained silent. Guardians of mysteries, the war left incomplete. As the explorers climbed back toward the surface, the cold air felt sharper. Each unexplored passage hinted at secrets still waiting, untouched by time and human curiosity. From Danish beaches to Polish mountains, from Hamburg parking lots to Normandy forests, Nazi bunkers continue surfacing across Europe decades after the war ended. Each discovery challenges what historians thought they knew: fully furnished rooms that should have been looted, submarines sealed beneath city streets, skeletons stripped of identity beneath the headquarters of Nazi command. Some have already been found by accident: a farmer's field in Poland, a cellar in France, an air shaft beneath Berlin, each revealing strange rooms never listed in wartime maps. What remains undeniable is that these sites existed, sealed, preserved, and intentionally hidden beneath ordinary ground. The cold, airless environments acted like natural vaults, preserving delicate items, human stories, and unanswered questions for generations. And the most unsettling question remains: how many more are still hidden, waiting beneath ordinary streets and quiet fields, their stories frozen in darkness? Were you shocked by what lay hidden inside these secret Nazi bunkers and the secrets they revealed? about a war many thought was fully documented. Share with us which discovery left you speechless.